Hey, Southwick Time Machine fans! In this episode, we are going to revisit another true crime story. Now, this particular story, when it made its debut on the Southwick Time Machine, it had a really good response from readers, had a lot of interaction. Now, the story takes place in 1988, and when it comes to true crime, I typically shy away from more recent events. There's a very fine line when you're doing true crime, but I'm glad I put it together based on the reader feedback. So now with this particular story, if you read the online version of it, you'll see that I was kind of playing and jockeying between present tense and past tense. Now, we usually, of course, when you're writing history, you're usually always writing it in the past tense. But I was kind of experimenting with doing some present tense, and you'll see it kind of fades into past tense. Another thing you might see in the story is that while it's talking about something that's happening at the present time within the story, it'll flash back to moments or minutes before. So that's something else. But anyway, let's dive into Cocaine Cowboys. So at about 3:15 p.m. on January 29th, 1988, a teller at the Bank of New England West Branch in the Village Green Shopping Center on College Highway in Southwick, Mass. Tripped the bank's silent alarm. Now, moments earlier, a light-colored Pontiac Bonneville pulled up to the back of the bank. Two men got out and walked along the side of the building to the front. With their faces covered, they entered the bank through the front door, and the surveillance cameras start capturing their every move. Now, one of the men is carrying a sawed-off shotgun. The other man has a revolver. So the men order the 5 or so bank employees to freeze. The man with the handgun leaps over the counter, and he's waving his gun around. He orders the frightened tellers to empty their drawers into his bag. Now they skip the vault, and they exit as quickly as they came. So they're in and out. So the armed robbers flee northbound on Route 202, College Highway, and they go into neighboring Westfield. And at that point, no one knows how much money they got away with, but the bank does an audit, and it turned out to be $31,732. Now, it was a lot of money in 1988. So when the thieves reached the intersection of Southwick and Tannery Road, they abandoned the vehicle in a nearby parking lot, and then police find it about 90 minutes later. Now, police, they're not sure if they even have the right vehicle, so they have it towed to Southwick, where they secure it overnight until a fingerprint expert can see if it's connected to the heist. Now, they didn't know if it was connected because earlier that day, a gentleman out of Springfield reported his Bonneville was stolen. So they wanted to see if the two are connected or not. So I want to jump back for a minute and talk about the Village Green Shopping Center. Now, for folks who know Southwick, the Village Green Shopping Center is right in the center of town. Today, you will find the delicious Village Pizza there. There's a Dollar Tree store. I believe that's what's called a dollar store. There's also, I believe, Napa Auto Parts is there. Now, when the Village Green Shopping Center was initially opened, it had its grand opening on April 20th, 1966. Now, Clyde Jones, who owned Jones's Supermarket, which was just down the road, they outgrew that space, and he needed a bigger space. So he had the Village Green Shopping Center constructed, and Jones's Supermarket was the anchor. And then when it opened, there was also a Venetian bakery, a barber shop, and at the very end of the plaza, so if you're looking at Village Pizza, the very end on the right, that was a bank. Now, for readers of the Southwick Time Machine who read the Adams Clothing Store story, you would know that Adams Clothing Store, that's where Mrs. Murphy's is today, delicious Mrs. Murphy's, absolutely love them. That store was a clothing store, and then it got divided, and half of it was the Third National Bank of Hampden County. So the Third National Bank of Hampden County, when the Village Green Shopping Center opened, they moved across the street and occupied that space. It later became the Bank of New England West. So that kind of gives you an idea about the geography there. What a blessing that Mrs. Murphy's and Village Pizza are still there. Two of my favorite places, absolute must-stops when I'm in Southwick. Jones's Supermarket back in the day, every time I mention the word Jones's Supermarket, I talk about that with people, I just get this overwhelming smell because in the back of the store, they had this big glass display case where they had their fresh baked cookies. Now, they were the very large cookies, and they had a very distinct smell. They were just absolutely delicious. I remember shopping there with my mother. It was a great store. It was very sad when it closed. After it closed, it later became Big E's, and then there was a coupon scandal there. That's another story for another time. But anyway, it's good that Village Pizza is still there and Mrs. Murphy's. Anyway, we're getting back to the story. So, the thieves, went ahead and robbed the bank, got away with, $31,732. They abandoned the car, and then the police are like, okay, we don't know if this is connected because this guy had a Bonneville stolen out of Springfield. Let's see. So anyway, the next day, Officer Robert Laughlin of the Southwick Police Department. Now, Officer Laughlin, now a lot of people know him, especially people who grew up in the 80s and went to Southwick High School. He was always the officer who did the dances at Powder Mill and Southwick High School. So he was a very well-known officer. So he provided the community with an update on the status of the investigation. Now, the investigation, because it's a bank robbery, it's not just happening at the local level. The state, Massachusetts, is involved. The feds are involved. The FBI got involved because it was a financial institution that was a member of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, better known as FDIC. Now, FDIC is an organization that Congress created to partially insure bank deposits. So if you have a bank that fails, you can get part of your money back. Gives the general public a sense of ease, if you will. So Officer Laughlin, he informs the community. He goes through local news outlets and kind of puts the word out there because the community's really on edge. This is a very, very brazen robbery. It's an armed robbery. Very, very brazen. It's in the middle of the afternoon in the center of Southwick. Now, bank robberies in New England were very common in the late 80s. Actually, pretty much all through the 80s. It was very, very common, but it was not common in Southwick. It was so unheard of. Now, readers of the Southwick Time Machine will know that there are obviously other bank robberies have occurred in Southwick. But at this time period, it really wasn't something that the average Southwickian had to even worry about. So it was very, very shocking for the community at large. This was the type of thing that would be happening in like Springfield or Hartford or notorious areas like that. But not in Southwick. Southwick, back in that time, you could leave your doors unlocked. Growing up, we always left we lived at 5 North Long Yard Road. We always left the doors to the house unlocked. The keys were always in the ignition of the car. The car was unlocked with the keys in the ignition. Never, ever had a problem. Unfortunately, times have changed, sadly, and that's just not the case anymore. So Laughlin, he gives an update, and he's like, you know what? This seems so professional. These guys were just in and out. So what they do is they talk to other police departments. So they send out a broadcast to other law enforcement agencies requesting any information on similar cases. Again, very brazen. These guys have to be professionals. They were in and out so fast. All they did was empty the teller till, skip the vault. And they had a getaway car waiting. They seemed like they were professionals. So detectives had still shots of the suspects taken from video from the bank surveillance cameras. And what they did is, before releasing them to the general public, they went ahead and sent them to the FBI crime lab in Washington, D.C. Now, today, when you see footage on these reality shows of like holdups and stuff at convenience stores and stuff, the footage isn't always the best. Now, it was really bad in the 80s because the technology just wasn't there. So they took these still photos, sent them to the crime lab, and then when they got them back, they released them to the general public through the crime prevention unit of the Massachusetts State Police. Now, they also released the description of the robbers. They said the man with the handgun had dark hair, and they believed that he was in his mid-20s, about 5'8 to 5'10". He weighed about 175 to 190 pounds. And at the time of the heist, he wore a hoodie and a brown leather jacket. Now, they described the other man as being in his early 30s. He was 6 feet tall, he had dark hair, he weighed about 180 to 200 pounds, and during the heist, he wore sunglasses and a light trench coat. So the case appears to grow cold. There's no new leads. There's nothing happening. So the cops are kind of at a standstill. Like, okay, this is kind of bizarre. These guys seem like professionals. We put the word out to the other police departments, other agencies. No one's getting back to us with anything. Everything seems to just, be on hold that these guys are going to get away. Well, not so fast, because about shortly after 4 p.m. on March 24th, 1988, a car pulls up to the Community Savings Bank in nearby Feeding Hills. So in the Feeding Hills section of Agawam, if you're at the crossroads in that general area, there are 2 banks across the street from one another, and they hit the Community Savings Bank. So roughly 40 minutes before that car pulls up to the bank, 2 men approach an unidentified elderly man. Now, this man was from Granby, Connecticut. He was in the Big Y supermarket parking lot in Southwick. His wife was in the grocery store doing some shopping. He was waiting in the car, and all of a sudden, his passenger door comes flying open, and these 2 guys forcibly get him out of his car. It was a late model Plymouth Horizon. They throw the elderly guy out, and they take his car, and they drive it to Gristmill Plaza in the center of Southwick. And there, they're scoping out the Southwick branch of Orinoco Savings Bank. But now, for reasons unknown, they ditched their plan to rob it, and they decide to go to Feeding Hills instead. So they go to the next bank in Feeding Hills, down by the crossroads. And they were going to rob that one, but then they saw some children out by the front door, and they said, this could end really bad, so we don't want to do that. So they look across the street and see the Community Savings Bank. There's nobody really around, so they go ahead and they decide to knock that one off. So they attempt to conceal their identities. They're wearing bandanas and hoodies. The bank security cameras, pick up them as they enter the branch. They pulled out their weapons as soon as they entered. It was a shotgun or a rifle. The other guy had the handgun. And in similar fashion, one of the men vaults over the counter, and he's stuffing cash from the visibly shaken teller's drawers into his bag, while the other man guards the customer entrance. In less than 15 minutes, they're out of there. Now, the bank, they kind of, their insurance company said, you probably don't want to release this information about how much money was stolen, but they did later release it, and it turned out to be $20,430. Again, a significant amount of money. in the late 80s. So police locate the stolen Plymouth within 5 minutes of the daring heist. They find it was about 200 feet from the bank at the Carriage House Apartments. Now, they saw no immediate connection, but they noticed striking similarities between the Southwick bank heist and this one. A lot of similarities, and the question became not if, but when will the robbers strike again? Well, that day came on April 22nd, 1988, when two men wearing ski masks entered the Bassdale Plaza branch of Connecticut Bank and Trust in East Windsor, Connecticut. It was about 11:10 a.m. when that happened. The armed men walked through the front door. They ordered the 5 customers and four bank tellers to freeze. The man with the shotgun guarded the entrance, while the other man leaped over the counter and emptied the teller's drawers. Now this time they also hit the drive-through, but they skipped the vault and were out of there in just record time. So the masked bandits, they escaped in a yellow car with an undisclosed amount of cash. It was believed to be somewhere around $9,000. Now, not far from the bank, they turned on an isolated road and abandoned the vehicle where the East Windsor Police Department found it. Now, when they found it, it was stripped of its tags, the VIN number was removed, they had no way to identify it. So detectives figured the crooks had a separate getaway car waiting for them, as they did in the Southwick and Feeding Hills heists. Now, FBI agents and the Massachusetts State Police raided an apartment in Springfield around 4 p.m. on either May 3rd or May 4th, 1988. They arrested 28-year-old John Robertson and 22-year-old Richard Bolduc. Now, this is the only clue that the police had. They're figuring, okay, these guys robbed the Southwick Bank. We didn't really have many clues on that one. Things kind of dead. They hit the Feeding Hills one. Again, not a lot of clues behind. We couldn't really get anything off the cars. So this guy, Bolduc, he raises flags. In like just a few hours after the holdup, he goes to see his landlord, and he gives this landlord $800 in cash for 2 months of back rent. Now, the landlord heard about the bank robbery, so when he got cash from this guy who never has any money, the alarm bells went off. He was kind of connecting the dots. So he put the word out to local authorities, and that's what caused the FBI agents and the Massachusetts State Police to raid that apartment. So without that landlord doing his civic duty and reporting his suspicion to authorities, this case may have went unsolved. Who knows? So more arrests followed. They're interrogating the 2 people they arrested. They're cracking under the pressure and, probably gave out some information. Some more arrests followed, including 51-year-old Henry Morin. Now, he was charged with being a fugitive from justice from Connecticut. Now, this guy already had a record. He was just trouble. He kind of was homeless. He would just stay at different places. Now, he's 51. He was dating, at one point, he was dating a 26-year-old girl named Dawn. They were kind of on and off again. So police fingered him as the tall, tan man. He was kind of like the ringleader. So they held him on a $100,000 bond as he awaited extradition to the Nutmeg State on charges of first-degree robbery and second-degree larceny. And this was for the Connecticut Bank and Trust heist in East Windsor. Now, Connecticut prosecutors believe Bolduc and Robinson, they participated in the Feeding Hills and Southwick holdups, but not the East Windsor one. So you got this little crime ring going on, if you will. So at the time of Morin's arrest, police found a loaded sawed-off shotgun. However, they believe he carried the revolver during the robberies, because they also found a Ruger 41 caliber Magnum inside the car. Now, this is the car that his ex-girlfriend owned, the 26-year-old girl there. So officers also found cocaine on her person. That resulted in her arrest and drug charges for both of them. Now, investigators believe that the firearms were confiscated were the ones used in the robbery. Now, the arrest came as Morin and his ex-girlfriend were transferring items from one vehicle to another. So the cops, and the FBI, they just, swarmed them, totally took them by surprise and locked them up. Very, very shady characters. So Massachusetts State Police, they arrested another person, 25-year-old George Rios of Springfield. They turned him over to the Connecticut State Police's Central District Major Crime Squad in July. They charged him with first-degree robbery and first-degree larceny and held him on a $100,000 bond. Now, the reason they're interrogated all the men and everything went through the trials and everything. The reason the men gave for robbing the banks was that they needed money to fund their crack cocaine habit. And interestingly enough, none of the cash was ever recovered. So that's Cocaine Cowboys. You can check it out online on the Southwick Time Machine. Now, there's a lot of edited out additional author's research notes. There's some very interesting stuff on that. We'll just peruse through some of that very quickly. One very thing of interest is that all of, they interviewed the bank tellers who were there during the robberies and stuff like that. And all the tellers said the same thing. They said that the robbers were very, very polite. That was one thing consistently that all the bank tellers had said. So that was very interesting. And then there's something else that's very interesting. So Richard Bolduc, he got arrested again in 1994. So remember, the original heists were in 1988. In 1994, this guy gets arrested. His time was for robbing the Bristol, Connecticut branch of Fleet Bank. Now, once word got out that he got arrested for this, his employer immediately fired him. Now, the reason he got arrested was because an anonymous caller had told police that he recognized the man in a photo release from the bank's security cameras, and they pointed the finger at Bolduc. But you know what? The caller was mistaken. Bolduc actually didn't rob that bank, so he lost his job. He's trying to get his life back on track, so he lost his job and everything after that. So that was very interesting. The story went down quite a rabbit hole. Check it out. Check out the additional research notes. Let me know what you think. Also, if you have your February 2025 edition of Southwoods magazine, be on the lookout for Diamond of Deceit, story that takes place in Granville. Very interesting story. I like putting that story together. When it got published in Southwoods, the title got changed or something happened there at publication. But Diamond of Deceit, that was the original title. It will be on the Southwick Time Machine webpage soon for those out of the Southwoods distribution area. And it's actually up on Southwoods webpage also, so you can view it there. It'll be up there probably for, I'm guessing, probably about a month. I think they switched it out before the next edition comes out. Anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe. We're doing the YouTube videos now per reader requests. Please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be adding more videos regularly while I continue to do stories, different updates. Let me know how you like them. I swear we're going to work hard and try to make them better. I know we're kind of doing fly-by-night here, but bear with us. And thank you for your continued support of the Southwick Time Machine. The goal is to get the ads off of the Southwick Time Machine webpage. So with your support, we're going to make that happen. So thank you very much.